Dad hired a tech-savvy friend named Jamie to trace the fake accounts. Jamie discovered the scammer was using VPNs and anonymous email addresses, making them nearly impossible to track. However, he noticed patterns in the writing that suggested the person knew details about my sister's life that weren't public. They mentioned specific restaurants she'd been to, and referenced inside jokes from her old Instagram posts. My sister suddenly remembered giving her login information to someone months ago. During her scamming days, she'd met a girl online named Benji, who claimed to be another young woman pretending to be older for money. They'd bonded over their shared schemes, and even exchanged tips. My sister had trusted her enough to share passwords so they could boost each other's fake profiles with endorsements and comments. We tried to find Benji, but discovered that profile had also been fake. The person behind it had been collecting information from vulnerable teenagers, learning their methods, and gathering their photos. My brother found similar complaints on scam warning forums from other young people who'd been impersonated after sharing information with Benji. The scammer was specifically targeting people who'd already created fake business personas, using their established false identities to run bigger cons. My parents were at a loss. They couldn't afford another $15,000 payment, having already depleted their savings for the previous restitution. My sister offered to work extra shifts at Uncle Frank's shop, but even working 7 days a week, it would take her years to earn that much. She was terrified of going to jail for something she didn't do, especially when she'd worked so hard to reform. That's when Nancy, the social worker, suggested we file a police report for identity theft. She explained that having official documentation would help prove my sister was a victim this time, not the perpetrator. My parents were hesitant, worried that involving law enforcement might expose my sister's past crimes. Nancy assured them that since restitution had been made and no charges were filed previously, the focus would be on the current identity theft. We went to the police station where my sister had to explain her entire history. The detective taking the report was skeptical at first, clearly thinking this was another scam. My sister broke down crying, pulling out her work schedule, pay stubs, and the therapy completion certificate. She showed him the calluses on her hands from months of manual labor and photos Uncle Frank had taken of her progress learning automotive skills. The detective finally believed her when Jamie showed him the technical analysis of the fake accounts. The IP addresses were from different countries, and the scammer was using sophisticated methods beyond what a 16-year-old would typically know. He took the report, but warned that catching international scammers was extremely difficult. Our best hope was proving my sister's innocence to Benjamin, not catching the actual criminal. Meanwhile, Benjamin had hired a second private investigator who started showing up at our house. This one was more aggressive, taking photos of my sister leaving for work and following her to Uncle Frank's shop. He interviewed our neighbors, asking if they'd seen suspicious activity. Some neighbors who'd heard about my sister's past assumed she was up to her old tricks and told the investigator they wouldn't be surprised if she was still scamming people. The pressure was getting to my sister. She started having panic attacks before work, terrified that Benjamin would show up at the shop and cause a scene. Uncle Frank had to ban the investigator from the property after he tried to question customers about my sister. She couldn't sleep, constantly refreshing her phone to see if new fake profiles had appeared. The scammer was now using her photos on dating sites, romance scamming older men with promises of love and business partnerships. My brother had an idea. He suggested we reach out to the other victims of the Benji scam to see if they'd help us build a case. We found 3 other teenagers who'd been impersonated: Ashley from 2 states away, Min from across the country, and a boy named Benji whose photos were being used to scam women. All of them had similar stories of trusting Benji with information during their own attempted scams, only to find their identities stolen months later. We organized a video call with all the victims. Ashley had already been sued by 2 people and had to prove her innocence in court. Min's parents had hired a lawyer who specialized in cybercrimes. Benji was working with his local police field office because one of his victims was a federal employee. They all agreed to share evidence and support each other's cases. My sister cried with relief, knowing she wasn't alone in this nightmare. Min's lawyer suggested we create a comprehensive timeline showing exactly where my sister was during each scam. We gathered every piece of evidence: work schedules, security footage, therapy appointment records, even gas receipts showing she was driving to work instead of meeting victims. Uncle Frank wrote a detailed letter about her employment, including specific cars she'd worked on during the days in question. The scammer made a mistake. They sent Benjamin a video message using my sister's photos, but with an obvious deepfake voice. Jamie analyzed the video and found metadata showing it was created with a specific app that left digital fingerprints. He traced similar videos to other scams, building a pattern that showed one person or group was behind multiple identity theft cases. This evidence was crucial in showing Benjamin that something bigger was happening. My parents arranged a meeting with Benjamin through his lawyer. They brought boxes of evidence, including the police report, testimonies from other victims, and the technical analysis. Benjamin was a retired engineer who'd lost his wife recently and thought he'd found love and a business opportunity with the fake persona. Seeing my sister in person, clearly a teenager despite her past attempts to look older, made him realize he'd been thoroughly deceived by someone else. Benjamin agreed to drop the potential charges, but still wanted his money back from somewhere. His lawyer suggested suing the platforms that had allowed the fake profiles to flourish despite reports. My sister offered to help with the lawsuit, providing detailed information about how scammers operated on these sites. She spent days writing out every trick she'd learned, every vulnerability in the verification systems, hoping her insider knowledge could help shut down future scams. The other victims' families started a support group that met virtually every week. Parents shared their frustration and fear, while the teenagers worked together to monitor for new fake profiles. My sister became obsessed with helping others avoid her fate, spending hours after work searching for accounts using stolen photos. She created educational content warning people about the signs of business and romance scams, using using her own story as a cautionary tale. Uncle Frank noticed my sister was exhausted from working full-time and doing unpaid scam prevention work every evening. He offered to let her reduce her hours, but she refused, saying she needed the money for college and wanted to prove she could handle responsibility. He compromised by teaching her more advanced skills during slow periods, saying if she was going to work herself to death, she might as well learn something valuable. The investigation into the Benji scammer continued for months. The police cybercrimes unit got involved after discovering the operation had stolen millions from victims across the country. They interviewed my sister multiple times, impressed by her detailed knowledge of scam tactics. One agent even suggested she consider a career in cybersecurity after college, saying reformed scammers often made the best defenders against fraud. My sister's college applications were complicated by the ongoing investigation. She had to disclose the identity theft situation, which meant explaining her past. Most schools rejected her immediately, but one state university was intrigued by her story of redemption and her work helping other victims. They offered her conditional acceptance pending completion of her restitution and maintaining clean legal records for 2 years. The stress was affecting our whole family. My parents argued about money, blaming each other for not catching my sister's original schemes sooner. My brother threw himself into his own studies, determined not to cause any additional family drama. I found myself playing mediator, trying to keep everyone from falling apart while dealing with my own anger about how my sister's past actions had created this current crisis. One night, my sister overheard my parents discussing taking out a second mortgage to pay potential legal fees if more victims appeared. She came to me sobbing, saying she couldn't let them ruin their financial future because of her mistakes. She was considering dropping out of high school to work full-time, maybe multiple jobs, to earn money faster. I had to physically stop her from leaving the house at midnight to look for night shift work. The next morning, she asked Uncle Frank if she could learn skills that paid better than basic maintenance. He started teaching her bodywork and painting, which commanded higher wages. She threw herself into learning, practicing on junked cars until her work was flawless. Within a month, she was doing paint jobs that customers specifically requested, earning commission on top of her hourly wage. The Benji scammer must have sensed the investigation closing in because the fake profiles suddenly stopped appearing. The existing ones went dormant, no longer messaging potential victims. This was both a relief and a worry. We had no idea if they were planning something bigger or had simply moved on to new identities. My sister still checked obsessively, terrified she'd wake up to find new victims demanding money. Benjamin's lawsuit against the platforms gained media attention, though my sister's name was kept out of it as a minor. The case highlighted how easy it was for scammers to steal identities and operate with impunity. Several other victims joined the lawsuit, creating a class action that demanded better verification systems and faster responses to reports of fake profiles. My sister provided expert testimony via written statement, detailing exactly how she'd bypassed security measures in her past. The other teenage victims and their families became our unexpected support system. We had monthly in-person meetings at a community center, sharing updates and strategies. Ashley's family drove 3 hours to attend, saying it was worth it to be around people who understood. Min started a private online forum where we could quickly alert each other to new scams using our photos. Benji created automated alerts that notified us whenever our images appeared on new sites. My sister's transformation continued through all this chaos. She no longer wore designer knockoffs or tried to look older. Instead, she embraced looking her age, wearing Uncle Frank's shop t-shirts with pride. She started tutoring other at-risk teenagers, teaching them legitimate ways to earn money online like freelance writing or virtual assistants. The community center let her use a room for free, recognizing the value in keeping kids from falling into scamming. 6 months into the identity theft nightmare, we finally got good news. The police had arrested a group operating out of Eastern Europe who'd been running the Benji scam, among others. They'd stolen millions using hundreds of stolen identities. While it was unlikely any money would be recovered, having the criminals caught meant the fake profiles finally stopped completely. My sister cried with relief for hours. Benjamin formally dropped all claims against my sister after the arrests. He even apologized for the stress he'd caused, saying he understood she was a victim too. He joined our support group, sharing his perspective as someone who'd been scammed to help the teenagers understand the real impact of these crimes. His stories were heartbreaking. He'd been looking for companionship after his wife's death and thought he'd found both love and purpose. With the immediate threat resolved, my sister could focus on finishing high school and preparing for college. She continued working at Uncle Frank's shop, but reduced her hours to have time for studies. Her grades improved dramatically, and her college essay about redemption, identity theft, and finding purpose in helping others was powerful enough that 2 more universities offered her acceptance. The experience had changed our entire family.